Hello. Thanks for being here, braving the air and the traffic. We're going to walk through the panel and some of their thoughts in a minute, but before we do, I'm going to share with you just a few slides, and I haven't got a clicker. That's interesting. We're just going to share very, very quickly with you a few highlights from some work that the World Federation of Advertisers have done recently. Firstly, working out how marketers have reorganized their own teams, but also how they've been working with agencies to reorganize on that side. And that second piece is brand new. I think it's being shown here for the first time. You may see more of it during the day. And there's no great surprises here. How do I advance this, please, folks? Anyone with a slide clicker in the house? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Right. And trust me, I'm not going to present all of these. I just want to make a point on each one. The first bit is that recently, members have put a huge time into leadership, into organization design, and into capability building of their teams, and we'll talk more about that. Second, in housing, and all the other new models are starting to develop. They're really on everyone's mind, especially for content and for data-driven marketing. Some of you, most of us have seen this one way or another. I think it started at McKinsey, but this idea that we're moving from vertical organizations that are run like machines in hierarchies to organisms where you have agile teams that form spontaneously. And I'm sure we'll hear a lot about this. But there are some challenges around working cross-functionally and being self-organized. Okay, 4 things that are keeping people awake at night, apart from all the usual stuff around brand safety and all that heavy lifting, are personalization, how we actually move that, and just how much is necessary. Capabilities, the in-housing, out-housing, co-location debate, and I'm sure you'll hear more about agency structures in the next session, because that also impacts the agency model. And then our marketing structures, are we globally based, are we locally based, somewhere in between, hybrids. The good news, I think, for anyone on the agency side of our relationships is that those client-agency relationships seem to be a lot more resilient than some people have argued recently. And the majority of marketers, certainly of our members, still favor long-term relationships with their agencies, which is terrific. Okay, and they talk about marketers talk about agencies, saying it's collaborative. So I think there's been a lot of hype about the general direction of travel of agency relationships. And when they do see an issue in a relationship, they tend to go head on in and to surface it really quickly and deal with it. There was one thing I loved in this last slide, which is buried away in there, but it's making sure when there is a problem, that as a marketer, you're going back to the agency and saying, how can we change? Are you getting great briefs? Is there something we're doing wrong? And I find, as an ex-agency person, trying to be a good client, I find that super refreshing to hear that from the other side of the industry. So, that's enough slides. Can we kill the slides? No, they're going to loop. Great, thank you. So I'd like to go back to our panel, and thank you to all of them for being here today. And especially, we'll start as far away from me as you can be, which is Americo. Americo's just flown in from Switzerland this morning with a slight cold, so we're going to talk to him first before he runs out of steam completely. And we'd just like to hear a little bit about what you're doing for a living these days and what sort of changes you're managing through at the moment.
So I lead the integrated branding communications at Shell, and what I'm trying to do these days is to capture the attention of my audiences with the work that we do. The fight for attention, if you work in marketing communications, is the big challenge that we all face as marketers. There is so much clutter out there, so many things that distract our audiences, so many great work out there as well. So as brands, the fight for attention is what keeps me awake at night. And of course, measure if I am successful or not doing that.
Fantastic. And have you seen huge changes in the way you're operating to get those results? There's a big difference.
Yes, I let's say the results of this piece of research do not surprise me at all. I would just say that the agile way of working, for example, it has implicit a level of collaboration that is unprecedented. And in a great company like Shell, one of the biggest companies in the world, you can imagine that sometimes it's difficult because naturally you tend to work on your silo. The scale and the size of the company is so big that it is difficult sometimes to work together. So these days we are at a level of collaboration that I would say as never before. And that is critical to achieve great results, not only internally, but also with our agencies. And with, I would say, the technology platforms, the social media, brands, etc.
Right, and if I can leap to this end and ask you, Hui Mei, you've worked through your career in agencies, you've been at Visa, you're now at HP, all very different. Can you explain a bit about what's happening at HP now, or your role there?
Hi everybody. So I'm actually managing the overall relationships at HP today. As marketing evolves, when you want to make the organization a lot more agile and a lot more efficient, you got to build a lot of capabilities that's internally. But then there's limitation, right? You don't have a lot of resources that you can actually hire internally. An agency has become a very critical business partner in our overall marketing ecosystem. Right? We've got to make sure that we have the right agency in place with the right capabilities and then with the right tools to actually help us move in the organization. So like David, I previously worked in an agency before. I've actually worked with the client side before. I have two hats. I have a lot more empathy of the discipline and the processes that we've got to work with agencies. I guess one of the biggest evolution for me was in the past, we tend to brief the agencies and then they go do the work. Today, I think the collaboration is very different. Agency has become such a critical resources and an external team for most of the clients. We require them to be a lot more involved, understanding a lot more about business. How do they translate our business objective, our business problems into marketing? So I felt that in HP, one thing good is that we actually have a committed team that actually is helping to manage that transition between the client and the agency. So
I found this refreshing. We were talking earlier, and I think I brought a bias to this, assuming that because HP is such a performance-oriented company, that the relationships will be shorter. But it's clear that they value these longer agency relationships as much as anyone. And certainly from my own point of view, I try to think of our media agencies as an extension of the team, because that's where 85% of our people sit. They're full-time employees working on our business. So I think it really does bring some rewards. And Nicole.
Yes.
Share with us, we were talking earlier, I mean, when I was looking back at people's careers, you've been very big in chocolate for a while.
I've been very big in lots of tasty things over my career, absolutely. So yeah, the last couple of years I've been leading the marketing organisation for Mars Wrigley across Australia, Asia, the Middle East and Africa. And I think for us what's changed, and it links a little bit back to what Americo was saying, is that the fragmentation is so big now within communication and so complex that the jobs that we're actually asking our marketers to do are becoming more complicated. And our marketers tend to work right across all of the growth levers. So not just on comms, they're involved in the strategy planning of what brands we're going to launch, particularly in our emerging markets. What's our portfolio going to look like? So I think we've really started to notice that we need to focus even more on capabilities for them to be successful, because they've just got so many competing interests wearing the marketing hat.
So you having to take things away from them to give them more time to do that? Or is it just about making them that much more efficient with the capabilities?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think we're looking at ways of building a bit more specialisation into our model and making sure that we have the right capabilities. I think it also goes back to making sure that actually the key skill our marketers have are really around collaboration and partnerships.
Yeah.
So whether it be with our sales teams, whether it be within, the agency collaboration you guys have already spoken about, I think, the job of a modern day marketer really is to how do you manage and bring all of that ecosystem together to drive growth for the organisation. And so, how can they know enough about all of these areas of digital, of comms, of content, enough about it, but actually the key skill, particularly of our senior marketers, is bring it together as a really great functioning ecosystem.
And talking of having respect for specialisms, we're a very diverse group here, so in the interest of diversity, we also have an agency representation, which I think is great.
Appropriately last.
Yeah. So now you have the floor to tell us where we're all going wrong. No, but I mean, you've been on the receiving end of this kind of tidal wave of change from the media industry and from marketers. I'm just really interested on your take on this.
Well, at Dentsu Aegis Network, our mantra is to innovate the way brands are built, to help our clients win, keep, and grow their customers. And if you look at that mantra, it doesn't say digital, doesn't say media, doesn't say creative, correct? Specifically to the unit that I lead, I say it's about moving business by moving people. That's really what the business that we're in. But how do you do that in today's environment? Where you can be everywhere, 24/7, everything is media, always on, and an environment that is ruled by data and technology. How do you do that? So we're trying to construct, and we're going through our own reconfiguration of the organization. So what we take as a compass is to be idea-led, data-inspired, and technology-enabled. And so I heard the word capabilities being uttered a few times. So we're trying to have 5 business domains that are key capabilities: content and creativity, commerce and user experience, CRM and loyalty, sports and entertainment, media and performance. So there we're trying to build world-class capabilities that we're trying to then bring together through a common culture and construct. I think that's the way we like to think about it, because, in a way, it's about changing capabilities. And a lot of times when we talk about transformation or innovation, it gets confused with technology. We always had technology. We always had data. But we now have it at a scale and speed that is unprecedented. So what are the right capabilities to make sure that you can capitalize on that? And that's what we're trying to do. But we need to do that every time in a different way with different clients, because I like to think that agency is a great word. I like to embrace, I said to all my people, agency is a great moniker, because everybody talks about consultancies, correct, nowadays, and that's very sexy. Our agencies used to be extensions of clients to make them relevant, to make them help move business by moving people. Now we need to do that at every day, at every touch point, at every moment. So what are the right capabilities? What is the right construct?
So being honest, I think sometimes the great thing about the agency world is that marketers who maybe don't feel they can move their own organization as quickly as they'd like to move, they can get that change quicker through the agency. But that's been the case in the past. But now with this rate of change, doesn't that put a different kind of pressure on your agencies or on your own team doing?
Yeah, exactly. Because on the one hand, we need to do that against the vision that we have, but then we also need to do that against the path that each of our clients is going. And that's why I think one of your slides about architecting the relationship is so important. Sometimes I sit with clients and I say, I'm going to be very honest. I do not see all the work that goes out of the door. And it's a major frustration because I love ideas. I love our product. But I think my role is to understand where you want to go, what are the opportunities as a client, and how do I build the right capabilities and bring them together for your benefit.
I'm just thinking, Americo, I remember in the days when I worked with Shell, they were huge on scenario planning and really trying to read ahead of these kind of things.
Still are. Sky Scenarios just published 6 months ago.
So is that all about world affairs, or does it boil down to these kind of things where the industries which work with us in our marketing supply chain are changing?
No. The Sky Scenarios is something very different. It's more about the evolution of the energy transition and the future of the energy and the planet, etc. This is
okay.
This is
other types of problems, yes, opportunities.
So I'm interested in how, as marketers, we are trying to plan ahead for this and not just be kind of washed along in the tide. Is there anything that HP is doing in terms of thinking about the agency of the future?
Yes, that is probably one of the number one topic that everybody is talking about. With the whole changing of the customer landscape, partnership ecosystem is changing as well. Everybody's talk about, we don't just build as a current state, we need to build for the future, right? So the agency ecosystem is becoming a lot more challenging for us as well. New capabilities are surfacing. We were just talking earlier that there is agencies that does creative, your media work. There are also other agencies that are coming in, providing marketing services, giving you the platform, providing you the technology, providing the automation. It's actually becoming more challenging now for marketeers. They have to start basically deciphering which is the right capabilities. How then do I make sure that one agency have to work with the other agencies, right? So the whole collaboration skill, like what we mentioned earlier, is actually very critical. A marketer today is not just to create campaigns. They got to know how to build a strong, talented team, or maybe a winning team. Combination of internal stakeholders, external stakeholders, and make sure that they all have a common objective to drive the business. All right, so which I felt today, I think that's how marketing is evolving. They have to be like talent management, basically, making sure that you put the right team in place, you drive them to deliver on the results.
And does that mean you start with different people to the ones you would have hired 5 or 10 years ago?
Well, yes and no, depending on what is the business objective. If the business objective requires a certain skill set, you might work with some of the incumbent agencies. If the campaign is a lot more something that requires a lot more technology, a different type of segment that you've never done before, you start exploring new capabilities, and then you start finding who's a new partner that you bring into the game.
Yeah, we were talking earlier about the number of marketers who are coming back for their second bite at the industry, having had a few years out in the digital world in one way or another. And that seems to be quite a common theme that we're seeing. Is there any change like that in your own organization or in the way you're structured these days, in terms of where you're finding talent from or how you're nurturing it?
Yeah, I think one of the challenges for some of the big global organisations like Mars Wrigley is how do you make sure that you're investing, your marketing support in the things that work, and you have a portion of it in the big solid agency relationships and partnerships. But then how do you at scale also make sure that you're tapping into some of the newer models or some of the new insurgents? And I think trying to strike that balance, I think, is one of the real challenges that we face today. And it's a real balance. So we've got to make sure that we're spending the most portion in that really proven space. But then how are we experimenting? And that's okay when you look at it at a country level, but when you start to look at it at a region level or a global level, I think for us that's one of the things that kind of keeps us as a marketing leadership team awake at night is your performance piece versus your kind of experimental piece.
So it's the long and the short of it, as probably one of the most well-read pieces of thinking this year, I guess. And we've seen this a lot, by the way, at the WFA. A lot of performance brands coming into the room saying, how do we do branding? And at the same time, all the big brands want to know about how to do performance. So there's been a complete skills shift, and we're starting to see that in our agencies too. So keep driving it.
Can I look into that? It's like, I call it new economy is meeting old economy. We see a lot of new economy companies coming that they have exhausted, their lead on technology and performance marketing. They now need to go and branch out to get a next level or next curve of growth into different product services, and they come to realization that actually brand is a platform. And so you're having discussions about from a totally different perspective, whereas old economy brands would like to move into new economy want to have a bit of old economy. And so we recently launched something called Dynamo Brands. It's Dynamo Brand Index, if you go online. And it defined that you really need to have both direction and energy to succeed in today's environment. And energy is brand actions, it's not just communications. And direction is basically the good old brand fundamentals. And if you pull back, it makes a lot of sense, because if you want to operate in a world of scale and speed, if you want to be able to be everywhere instantaneously 24/7, you need to have a clarity, you need to have that compass. And then you need to have the capabilities to roll it out across the relevant touch points.
So something that worries me sometimes in this new era is that we are so focused on data and we have so much of it. And I remember my former boss, Keith Weed, always talked internally and externally about the need for the marketing team to be responsible in the company for bringing the outside in, for bringing ideas, insights, and just what was going on in the world back into the organization. Is that something that your companies do consciously? Is it something where you have outreach programs or consumer visits? Is there anything Shell does in that area?
Yes, I would say we invest a lot in listening to what our audiences tell us, different types of research, social media listening, qualitative research, quantitative research, media relations, monitoring in terms of what appears on the news, all those type of things, plus many other reports, as you can imagine. All those type of things are inputs for us to generate and distill some great insights that we will then use in our briefings for the agencies. And great briefing starts with a great insight. Otherwise, we will struggle at a later stage with the creative output of it. So there is a lot of effort from us to really get good data. And one thing I've learned in market research over the years is stupid questions will get stupid answers as well. So we need to be very careful. Sometimes, unintentionally, we design the research in a way that delivers the answer that we want. So we just need to be very careful with that and be really genuine and agnostic and let the consumers come up with their own perspectives to us.
Yeah. We need to be careful that, data is so sexy right now. It doesn't replace insights.
Yeah, of course.
So we still need great people who can actually mine the data in the right way and in an unbiased way, rather than I'm just looking for the data that proves the point I want to make or proves what I want to launch inside my company. And I think, for me, that's a concern I see in the industry, because all you ever hear about at the moment is data, having the right data. For me, it's like having the right people with access to the right data and then turning them into really meaningful insights, so that when we're briefing our agencies, they're going to come up with some killer ideas based on...
Even in the case of data, I think, and for those of you that work in marketing communications, there is a very boring word called tagging, which is absolutely essential, is the kind of the foundation of any good piece of data, is to start by having good tagging. How many of you have run campaigns when the tagging was wrong? I have done some. So I'm not embarrassed to talk about that, because I've learned the importance of it, and I've learned the importance of getting a lot of data that doesn't mean nothing, because in reality the tagging, the base of it was wrong. So we need to be very careful with that.
But that goes right back to the clarity of where you would like to go. Your point of view as a brand, as a company, where do you want to go? How do you see the world? And then say, okay, therefore I think we need to construct our marketing apparatus in this way, because that then drives very mundane things like tagging. I completely agree. And I think, you have data for the big parts, which is the insights. And then you have very granular data that allows us to really optimize commerce. In the old days, you would build brands and business in a sequential way. And now it's brands and business parallel. And the ability to do that and to capitalize on connections and commerce at the same time, I think that's where data can play a beautiful role.
Yes.
Maybe just to add on, I come from a performance-driven organization, technology, where marketing has to connect to sales, right? So the only common things that marketing and sales is data. So it has to be a very data-driven kind of conversation. But again, you don't use data for the sake of just doing business justification, trying to get more funds. Today in a lot of organizations, you hear new titles called data scientists. Right? It's no longer data analysts. You need people to actually bring in and say, yes, please give us the data, tell us what it tells us, but we need to start building story. And that's where content strategy comes in, right? The consumers today are so fragmented. Right. The data can tell so many different stories, and how then do we make it done in the most creative way? And this is something, again, we partner a lot with internal stakeholders and our external agencies as well to make sure that everybody has different perspective. Be very open to hear all the insights that different people are going to come to tell you. The more we are doing listening, like how most brands are now doing social media listening, listen to your clients, listen to your partners, listen to your internal stakeholders. The more data that we have, it will make us make an informed decisions, which I think data is still critical in the entire process of marketing planning.
Great, and I just want to use this to bring us back to another subject, which is, you were talking about tagging. Something we do in Unilever called reverse mentoring. I don't know if you have it in your companies, which is a polite way of saying old people getting taught stuff by young people who were below them in the pecking order. But it works really well, okay. And one of the things we've just introduced actually in Asia is compulsory tagging for all our general managers. We used to call them chairmen. Yeah. So they understand how this stuff works once, and they understand how these things happen.
Yeah, it's a bit tagging, SEO, all those type of things. They allow you to make the return of your investment on digital to multiply by 2, 3, 4, 5 times. Exactly. By just ticking all those boxes that are basically operational excellence type of activities. We are not even talking about any great creativity. Yeah. We are just talking about ticking the box and do the right thing since the beginning.
So here's the thing I want to bring, because I think this is up your alley, Dick, is what that's done for us is given those very senior people a newfound respect for super young people in the organization who actually know something they don't. And this respect for expertise, through my lens, is what sits right at the heart of this. Well,
that's very funny, because going again back to co-architecting, some of the discussions that I have then with clients, senior clients, is that, we essentially have the same challenge. How do we pair veterans like us, let's say above a certain age, who know everything about the category, have seen had a lot of different business experiences, but know very little about the latest tech or social. How do you pair that with a college grad that knows everything about the latter, little about the former? How do you do that? And if you talk about that, you talk about very basic things like titles, like careers, like HR, and all that. How do you bring these together, these capabilities, in a non-threatening way, so that you can produce different outcomes? Because we're not going to get these different outcomes if we don't organize ourselves differently.
Yeah, we need to provide a voice for those younger, more junior people in the organisation to be heard. So I think that's a job to break down hierarchy, because otherwise the knowledge and the insights that the junior people have often don't make it to the decision-making level. So I think that's something that has to change, and it comes back to not just collaborating this way across the organisation, but collaborating, right through. Exactly.
I'd love to know how you do this. It's something I've done very deliberately whenever I can in our teams now, is to say, when you're working in these cross-functional teams, in any kind of hierarchy, the boss, the leader, is not the most senior or loudest mouth person in the room. It's the subject matter expert whose help you need at that moment. And to get people over this old old way of working. So I disagreed wherever Ranji is with the title of this session is leading from the front. I would always call that leading from the middle. It's about being able to
play a coach.
The others. Is this something that is happening at Shell?
Yeah, totally. So what we said about the agile way of working, that is something that we today have implemented on the development of communications, for example, when we assemble what we call a content squad, which brings together different people from different areas of the organization, depending on the project, of course. But you can have people from, let's say, just to give some examples, people from procurement involved on a piece of work that we need to develop quite quickly, and we need to find the right agency to work with, and that person sits with us since the beginning. People from media relations, people from sponsorship, people from paid media, from PR, so multiple areas of the company that have their own teams, but they assemble together in the content squad. It's like the Avengers coming together and making something special.
But in a lot of the Avengers movies, as I recall them, I've got teenagers, there's quite a lot of infighting going on, right? I mean, what's the secret sauce in a big organization to stop that from happening? What kind of leadership does that need?
I think, first of all, the recognition that the way we used to work some years ago no longer works. Yeah? And I think everyone recognizes that today. The need for speed, I think it's absolutely critical. We need to be agile these days. And I can say that some of our best work and best results in terms of communications came from some events that Shell organizes at the global level called the Shell Eco Marathon events, where on a long weekend, we basically create the content, we edit the content, we publish the content, we amplify the content, we moderate the content, we design new content to answer to consumer feedback in real time. And that is, again, a content squad, in this case involving also external agencies that sit together with us and on that event in a small room with not much food and a bit of air conditioning, and everyone works really hard during those days to do something really special.
Yes.
Some years ago, this would be unthinkable. Yeah? And today, consumers, our audiences, they really value the fact that the event is happening in real time, and we are talking about it in real time. We are engaging with our audiences in real time. It's a bit of magic that we can do, and it has delivered great results for us.
Thinking about the need for speed, I would agree. Often it's the urgent projects where these things work. Hui Mei, I'm interested from your position and being in the global team, but based here in Asia. Do you see different parts of the world that have different ways of moving at speed?
That's a
trick question.
That's a really tricky question. Actually, I've done many roles reporting to global, managing the region here in Asia. I guess one of the things is it's always challenging, no matter what. Is it from a country view, a region view, or from a global view? I guess it's a lot more to do with, very critically, what is the leadership team, right? What is the principles and what are the things that you actually adhere to, right? If we always talk about breaking silos, it's not talking about silos as an organizational structure. I think we need to start thinking about breaking silos in your thinking. Right? People have a perception and say, I think this is the team, if I need to do this, let me invite that team. But generally nowadays, in a big, especially in global organizations, there are specialization skills, there are generalist skills, people come from packaged goods background, people come from performance-driven background. There's a good mix of a lot of experiences and talents around the organization. People need to stop. Don't prototype people. You got to start saying, what is our business objective? It goes back, to the fundamentals. Business objective, what do we want to drive? What's the problem that we want to solve? Let's then put the right team to work. It might be a marketing campaign. I might invite a salesperson. I might invite somebody that is from a channel marketing. Based on people's different experiences, we need to tap on that. We need to be a lot more agile. You work better with bigger teams that has different ideas, and they might bring in certain breakthrough thoughts that you may not have. All right, a big idea is already created from, even someone that maybe from a data analyst. He might say, I look at data every day so many times and everything. Why is it that certain basic thing we're not doing? That's a good spot for us as well, right? So we need to make sure that we are more open-minded again, and also have empathy and make sure that we basically look at how we drive capabilities. The capability is very wide, not within internal, it can be also external, or even through our partnerships.
So does Mars have a way of dealing with this at all, where you can find the right kinds of people to lead these cross-functional teams?
Yeah, I think it's similar to what Hui Mei is saying, that it's about what's the business objective we're trying to, to solve, and then who are the right people in the organisation to do that. I think the other thing that we've really tried to do in Mars is start to get people to think about their careers as collecting great experiences, rather than I have this job, then I move to this job and this job. So I think there's a job to be done, particularly in the marketing space, around, we want to give you great, meaningful experiences, which you'll see you working on different projects, but don't be so hung up on, I'm moving from this role to that role. And it seems to be, it's interesting, because I think when you've been around for a long time, it's easy for you to understand that concept and buy into it. I still find it's really challenging, even with younger people in the organisation, who I think have less bias around that. I still think they want to see what's the milestones, or what is it that's going to mark achievement for them. So I think we need to find out ways to almost market this, the beauty of agile teams, because sometimes people see it as a bit too flat. And it's interesting because Mars is a very non-hierarchical company in the scheme of things, but we still have that challenge about helping people think about collecting experiences, being on amazing project teams, rather than I'm a brand manager or I'm this manager. So I think that's a job we still have to do.
This reminds me, going back to 1970, working in agencies in London, where you kind of felt if you wanted to move up, you moved on every 2 or 3 years. And people had very long CVs. And then often, I think, I met a lot of people at the top who were promoted beyond their ability because they were specialists who shouldn't be running companies necessarily. So you've got this odd imbalance. I mean, how's the agency world dealing with this now, Dick? Because this is a different kind of development and retention issue.
Let's see if I'm still sitting here next year. No, I think, that's... let's say the best account director doesn't necessarily make the best managing director of an agency. It's different skills. And going back to you in terms of leading from the front or leading from the middle, I think, as a good agency leader, you need to be a player coach nowadays. I like to think about agencies as a football team. I need to have the best. I only have 11 players on the field, positions to give out. I need to have the best players to play that particular match. I unfortunately don't have the luxury of a bench. But I do need to know what kind of capabilities I would like to have whenever they become available or necessary. And I think a lot of times we do not leave capabilities behind and embrace new ones in time. And I think that's a real challenge. And you alluded to that earlier. It's like, okay, we have a job to do. We need to deliver today, and we need to ready ourselves for the future. And we know where it's going. How do you balance that? How do you deliver today and still try to move towards the future? And I try to simplify that as a football team. It's like, okay, what are the capabilities that I need now? What are the capabilities that I have to have very soon? Have I identified them? When do I move them in to the expense of other capabilities? And the interesting, of course, conundrum is that in a lot of cases, it's not an either or. If something new becomes available, the old thing is not necessarily immediately obsolete.
Right. So something we're learning, I think, on our journey, particularly through data-driven marketing and the way marketers are reorganizing around that, is that there's 2 tracks. There's the plumbing, the science, getting everything laid down, and then there's the human aspects of it. And I'm starting to see that some parts of the world are really good at thinking out the plumbing, and other parts are actually quicker to get the team spirit moving and the cross-functional collaboration going. Are you seeing differences around the world in this?
Necessity is a great driver.
Sorry?
Necessity is a great driver, and pragmatism. You know, in a lot of cases, you know, I still like the whole Jack Welch quote. It's like, when do you blow up the company? When it's going well. It's not a very fortunate analogy at the moment with the way GE is going, but I think that's really the case. And a lot of times when things are going well, that's when you need to see what you're going to change. And I think that's where, if you're sitting on huge market share or very, you know, good positions in markets, then. But if you're in the challenger market, if you're in developing markets, especially here, you're building, you think differently about resources and allocations.
Yeah, there can be an urgency.
I was just going to say that it's also important that we understand the different individuals and the way they think and their ambitions from a personal perspective. I read a book recently where the author of that book, it split the teams in two different types of persons, which I tend to agree. And she was saying that one group is the group of the superstars, which are quite ambitious. They want to move forward very quickly, and you know, they have a very clear objective. And another group is the group of the rock stars, which know very well what they are doing. That's what they want to do as well. They feel well, they are happy, they are motivated, and they are a really important foundation for the organization to continue to move, you know, without mistakes. And at the same time allowing those superstars to go ahead and move and go to other areas, etc. So our ability to blend these two different types of personalities within a team is also very, very important, because we need this ambition and we need this foundation, and those two things together will give us the way forward.
Nicely put, and that's very different from hiring in your own image, which is what most of us are guilty of most of the time, right?
Yeah.
It's a much more balanced view. We're getting close to the end, so it's really just a chance for you all to share any final thoughts you've got on this in terms of, you know, the change that we're going through, the new kind of leadership that we need, and you know, what you feel are the most important aspects that we can bring to it as leaders in our businesses.
I guess from my perspective, with everything that is changing, I guess always as advice from a leadership team is always to embrace and accept change, and to do continuous learning as well. I guess it's critical for people to build capabilities, because you could be doing a job today, doing it as a marketing, tomorrow you could move to a sales job. So I guess that's the focus, and make sure that we embrace the change and start building capabilities so that you will always remain relevant, not only in your own organization, but everywhere, right?
Yeah, I would say that the most important thing is behaviours. I think that behaviours and ways of working trump any structure or any org change at any point in time. And so I think focusing on people who have the right behaviours and within that have learning agility. Yeah, so if we hire teams of people that have learning agility, then whatever we're going to need from them from a capability piece in the future, they're going to be learning agile.
You just stole my part, it's like she said it. But I call it 40% skill set, 60% mindset. You know, at certain levels, you will have a pool of skilled talent available. What sets it apart is the human element, is the mindset. And I think that's really important, because if we need to move at scale and speed, we need to move together. And the ability to do that comes down to people, the mindset of people.
I would just, well, I agree with everything that you have said. I would just add that while it's very important for us to have some space to fail, and to fail, it shouldn't be a problem, because it just shows that we are pushing ourselves to new things, and we should, as marketers, do that all the time, because that's where growth and opportunities exist. And associated with that, there will be some failures, and we should accept that. At the same time, over my career, I have learned that the best governance is to be successful. If you are successful in what you do, you are like a magnet for the rest of the organization, because the rest of the organization will want to work with you, will want to copy you, will want to replicate what you are doing, and that is good for us. It just helps you on your career, helps the organization that you are working with, and it builds respect and credibility with your colleagues. So that is very, very important. Doesn't really matter if you work in a global structure, in a local structure, in a regional structure. All those structures are, let's say, influenced by the level of success that you have. If you are successful, doesn't really matter the structure that you work with. If you are unsuccessful, all those structures will fail.
That's what I take from this. It's not about the plumbing, it's about the people. And as I keep telling my daughter, I think these days, the future belongs to inquisitive, sociable geeks. They're going to give us the specialist roles that we need, but they're going to actually keep things fresh. So listen, thank you very much. Really interesting conversation, and I hope you'll be able to stay with us for the rest of the day. Can we have a round of applause for our panel, please?
Thank you.